I mentioned it in one of the chats that I saw this morning, but just as a heads up, since Brian's out of town this week, any recordings that we do for classes this week likely will be sent out at the end of the week. So just know, if you haven't gotten it, no worries. It'll go out later. So bear with us. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so welcome you guys. Thanks for hopping on today. We're going to be talking about showing homes and writing offers. Before we kind of jump into things though, I want to kind of get a pulse on y'all's experiences thus far. I'm going to kind of get granular on some levels in terms of talking about how I prepare for showings, but at the same time, even if you've shown homes before, it's always nice to have someone else's perspective on how they do it and kind of collaborate and find what works for you. So before we get into it, will you guys just tell me like how many homes you feel like you've showed, whether you need advice on formally writing offers or just kind of what you're hoping to get out of today and what your experiences have been? Amy, would you mind starting? I might just kind of go down the list.
Sure. I've actually shown several along the coast, but not in the Raleigh area for anyone other than like going to tour homes for myself.
Got it. Totally. And then I'm sure you've written some offers at the coast as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. General knowledge to kind of get on the same page and see how other people do it here in Raleigh. Awesome. Sounds good. I'm sure there will be a lot of similarities. It's always nice to know. Kuminisa and Eric, I know you guys are relatively new. Have either of you gone to tour any homes, whether for a client or for yourselves yet?
Yes, I have went to tour a couple of homes, but I haven't written any offers yet.
Okay, wonderful. Have you done any of the tours with clients or for yourself?
For myself.
Okay, wonderful. Awesome. That's a nice way to get started. It's always nice to kind of get a lay of the land and honestly to practice the lock boxes before you're in front of people, as silly as it sounds. Cool. This is a great place to start. AJ, I know you've got some experience. What are you hoping to get out of today?
Well, I figured I'd at least take the class and get your perspective on, maybe I could take some of your knowledge and add it to what I already have.
Awesome.
I'm not going to say I'm the best at showing homes and writing offers. I kind of do mine very basic. I try to keep everything as simple as I can. I don't want to bombard people with a lot of paperwork and a lot of talking when I'm showing. But I guess that's just my tactic. I'm willing to change it if somebody else has any good ideas.
Absolutely. And I mean, you kind of nailed it, right? I'm going to talk about a lot today. Honestly, most of what I'm going to be talking about is how I prepare as an agent and kind of the one-off comments that I make when I'm in the home. But exactly to your point, our goal here is not to sell someone when we're in a home. I can say with certainty that I don't have any opinion or any care about what house my client buys or when. I'm simply here to be a resource. I'll say it a million times over. Really and truly, when you're walking in the door, my goal is just to let them do their thing. So totally agreed. But you never know what you'll learn. So as you guys know, as I'm going through this, especially since it looks like we've got kind of a smaller class today, as I'm going through this, please feel free to jump in and kind of give your perspectives, talk about what you do. Let me know if you have any questions or anything that you've kind of been curious about, either here in the triangle or with showings and offers in general. So we'll go ahead and get started. I am going to jump around a little bit today just to show you some of the functionalities of MLS as well. But let me know if you have any trouble seeing what I'm seeing. Real quick, when I do this presentation, can you guys see kind of along the far right-hand side as well? Like, can you see the full presentation?
Yes, I can.
Cool. It just has y'all's images over mine. So just want to make sure. So we've gotten the dream scenario. We woke up, we got a text from a client. They're ready to see a house. Amazing. What do you do now? First and foremost, I know likely if you've shown a few homes or if you kind of played around with it, you might know this already. But before we get into it, I want to go over a few things that you might need to know or expect when you're preparing for showings. Oh, let me turn off this waiting room. Maybe. Well, I don't know. I thought I could. Sorry, y'all, bear with me 1 second. Well, I guess I'll just leave it. Okay. Okay. So first and foremost, there are a few different ways that a showing can or a listing can be presented in MLS regarding showings. The main ones being either a vacant home or an appointment required. Seems pretty obvious, but if it's vacant, it is what is called a go-in show. Now, this type of information, most obviously, is given to you once you request a showing and we receive that notification. But very often it is also at the bottom of a given MLS page if you can't already tell from the photos, right? So if we are clicking through the photos and we see that there's no furniture in there, we can pretty well say with certainty that it's probably a vacant home and therefore is a go-in show. What that means is as soon as you request the showing, whether it's an hour in advance or whether you're sitting in the driveway, as soon as you request it, you are ready to go and the access information is sent to you in whatever ways you have set up with the showing time service. The other option here is if there are people still living there, if there's pets in the home, whatever the case may be, it's going to be appointment required. Now, if you see appointment required, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take us forever to hear back. It very well could be that the seller is just going to go ahead and click a response and we'll get an answer within 5 minutes. Occasionally, though, you will have an appointment required situation where it requires advance notice as well. And that also will be in the listing when you're on MLS. The most common one is either an hour or 2 hours notice. Someone that might be working from home and just needs to wrap up a call or figure out where they're going to, who's going to be able to pop by and let the pet out or whatever the case may be. So just kind of know that and be proactive in sharing this information with your clients. I know I jumped around a good bit yesterday talking about buyer consultations, but setting expectations with your clients about showings, not just about when you are going to be available, but also in terms of the response time that it might take to hear back from a seller. You know, I always kind of share with people, all right, awesome, especially as we're getting started in our relationship. I've gone ahead and requested that. I'll let you know as soon as I hear back. It does look like one of them is appointment required. So just note, I'll let you know as soon as I get that confirmation and I'll keep you in the loop because I don't want them to ever think that they are waiting on me. But at the same time, I can't go see a house until we've gotten approval from the sellers. Additionally, most appointment links here in the triangle are about 30 minutes. Prior to COVID, the average appointment time was about an hour, which was amazing. Not that you need that much time to go through a house, but mainly in terms of if you have a tour set up with 3 or 5 more homes, it can be a little tricky, especially towards the end of that tour, to time everything up perfectly because you might not know how long they're going to spend in a given home or how far the drive time is going to be, or if we get stuck in traffic. And so it was nice because you could kind of throw it on out there and you would provide enough coverage for yourself. But now, you know, during COVID, when showings were incredibly limited and there were a ton of buyers in the market, they actually weren't allowing overlapping showings. And so most appointments were only 15 minutes. Now their average is about 30, like I said. But the reason I say all of this is because we need to make sure our clients know that this is the time that we have to work with, and we can only go to this property during our appointed time. So it is important, it is crucial that you and I are both on time for this, especially if we're going to be seeing a number of homes. It's not as bad if we're just going to see one, but just know whatever that end time is of that appointment, we have to physically be out of the house. Make sure they know that, because there's nothing worse than when you get in and you haven't really prepared them for that. You think it's going to be a 10 to 15 minute showing anyways. And what do you know? You're standing there forever. Speaking from personal experience, I had one client that I love her to pieces. She was my dental hygienist for all of growing up. And so when she started looking at homes, we were looking at these condos in Cary. And I mean, I'm talking like 700 to 1,000 square feet max. And it was my first appointment with her, first 2 appointments with her. And I had to book follow-up appointments so that we could stay longer because we were in those homes for about an hour. She was just one of those people. She just needed to stand there and just kind of feel the space and see how it worked for her and to walk it a few times and really think it over. And so knowing that information, it just makes it a lot less awkward because you don't want to be rushing people out the door, but at the same time, we can't be trespassing. So just kind of keep that in mind. Additionally, one of the common questions that we'll get is, will we be the only people there? Most people don't care. It's not ideal. Obviously, we would love to be the only person in the property or the only group in the property, but realistically speaking, the sellers know that most people are going to be looking at homes on either their lunch break, the evening, or the weekend. And so if we all have the same schedule, then we need to be accommodating. And so most of the time they will allow overlapping showings. I also want you to know that the default setting in MLS is to allow overlapping showings. And so if the seller has allowed them, it doesn't mean that they are wanting to rake in as many showings as possible or whatever the case may be. No, it just means that they know as soon as you turn down a showing or something's not available, people have to accommodate getting in at another time. And when you're trying to sell your house, you want to make sure that you're allowing as many people as possible through the door so that you leverage that. I went to AJ, I'll get to you in just a second. I went to a showing for an appointment once for a client that I'd gotten off of the internet. I think it was a Zillow lead or something. And we went in and there were 2 cars in the driveway. There was another couple in the house already. There was someone pulling up. And so we went to go in. People were like, how rude. These sellers just want to get all the money. They want to let everyone in. Why would you not let us be the only person? Like somehow it's my fault that they allow overlapping showings, and I as the agent can never know. And so just setting that expectation with people, I'll show you in just a moment how we book showings and how we can see if there's going to be other people there, but I will only know that when I go to book our appointment. So typically what I'll do is I'll tell people that, just let them know, hey, this is how it works. I have to wait for the seller's approval. Our typical showing is about 30 minutes. I'll see if we can get longer, but just know that we both need to be on time and we got to be out the door within 30 minutes. We can talk in the driveway or in the street if we need to, and we may not be the only people there. Now, when I go to book it, I'll let you know. I can typically gauge whether any other showings are currently scheduled for that, but after I've booked it, it's very possible that someone else could come in after us and also book that same time. So if that's the case, just know it happens. Take a look around and we'll just make sure that we talk outside so no one else hears kind of what our thought process is. AJ, what you got for us?
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
First question is, say you're doing a show and I have a lot of properties that I'll show and they're out in the middle of nowhere. And sales service ain't that great. And say if I'm with a client and I know the client's going to take a little bit longer than usual, do I just go ahead and book 2 showings back to back on that place so he can give him like an hour, he or she an hour? Or because
Absolutely. That's exactly what I would do proactively. Okay. If you know that, because after a showing or 2, you start to get the feel of, are they a 5 to 10 minute type of tour or are they a lingerer, which is fine. And if they are the people that take a little bit longer, absolutely just proactively book a second follow-up appointment for right afterwards.
I just didn't know how to, if you booked them at the same time, how that would look to the listing agent.
Yeah. When you go to book showings, you can always add a little note to the listing agent. So you could always just put that in there and just say, my person tends to take a little bit longer. I'm adding another showing so that, we don't stay over, whatever the case may be. Okay.
And the other question that I have is there a way to see kind of how many appointments is booked through the Showing Time app? Because every time I use the app, I can't see. But when I go online, like to MLS, I can see, what's kind of blocked off.
It's a great question. To my knowledge, exactly what you said is true. I think you can only tell on MLS itself. I haven't, but I will say I'm not really an app person. So I only use their app for kind of backup. I never really use it as my primary for booking appointments. So I'm not really sure, but I think you can only see it on MLS itself.
Okay, so you basically suggest just using to go on MLS and do it so you can kind of, because I have yet figured out that I can see on the MLS, but I can't see it on my app. And I'm not going to say I'm an app person, but sometimes it's just a little convenient for me. Hey, I want to see this property. I'm not at my computer. And the hassle with logging into my MLS account and everything, I just go on the app and do it.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can also, this is like even old schooler, you can also call Showing Time. I've got that on one of the next slides, so we'll get there in just a second for their phone number, but you can also call Showing Time. So if you're in an appointment, especially if it's vacant, if it's appointment required, absolutely you want to book 2 appointments proactively. But if it's vacant and it's a go and show and you're in the home and you're running a little late or running a little long, or you don't have the access instructions, whatever, you can always call MLS or call Showing Time and book an appointment. They can send the access instructions then. But when you do that, you could always ask them, hey, are there any overlapping appointments? And they'll tell you. But I know that was kind of the same scenario as doing it in a different way. All right. Now, additionally, real quick, I want to make sure that we set the expectation with our clients that any requirements that they have that we can reasonably get ahead of prior to going to see the house, we need to make sure it is checked before we even request the showing. And so setting that expectation with your clients on the front end is incredibly important because it inevitably happens. Now, the little phrase that I want you to keep an ear out for is when people say, I need to be a certain distance from a certain address, or they need to have some criteria like that, that is incredibly important to them, that trumps all. Like that is the one thing that they're like, nope, absolutely hard pass on. I need to make sure that I'm setting the expectation with them in our buyer consultation, or at least after the first showing, of saying, hey, by the way, I'm going to be keeping an eye out for everything that we talked about, but just know anytime you have a property of interest, I want you to be the one that goes ahead and double checks the drive time from that house to your work or to your kids' daycare or whatever it is that they are looking to go to on a regular basis, for a number of reasons. One, I'm not trying to do anyone else's work. We both know that they have Google Maps also. But additionally, I never want to be liable for that. I want them to do that research for themselves. If I look at it and it's not in rush hour or something like that, and I have it shows me a drive time of 25 minutes and their cutoff is 30, but then during rush hour, it turns out it's 45 minutes. I don't want them to be able to point their finger at me and say, you told us X, Y, and Z. And so always put that back on them and save yourself time. Outsource what should be done by the client proactively. And just kind of set that expectation. You might have to continue to kind of hone in on that or remind them of that if they are in a situation where what they're looking for is inventory limited. So I had a client, for instance, he was looking for something very specific. It was a detached home, 2-story, 24 to 3,000 square feet. He really wanted his main criteria, twofold. His main criteria is, one, he wanted a wall that was big enough to hold his 80-inch TV, which is actually pretty difficult to find in a living room without a fireplace and without a window affecting that. And he wanted to make sure that he was no more than 35 minutes to the airport because he traveled a lot for work. And so we've been looking in a number of areas all throughout the triangle. We started edging further out to Pittsboro and South Fuquay. And I just reminded him, hey, it looks like these are a little bit further out. Are you sure this is a drive time that would work for you? It's like, yeah, I think it would. If it's the right house, I'm totally fine with that. And then we get to the property. It is an amazing price compared to what we've been seeing. It could fit the TV that he's interested in, met all of the boxes. And his one caveat the entire time was like, I just don't know the drive time. It's just too far. It's just too far. And don't get me wrong, after 1 or 2 times, you're like, okay, I get it. But after that, honey, we both know that this is your criteria. What are we doing? So just reminding them again, okay, wonderful. Going forward, let's just eliminate anything that's going to be 35 minutes or higher, because we both know that that's just going to be too far for you, right? Just remind them of things like that and put it on them. So on that note, what I was mentioning to you guys, Showing Time has an app. Although I'm not a big app person, I do highly recommend their app. It is, as AJ said, you can book showings through here. You can see access instructions. You can see details on, if you have a listing yourself, what showings are taking place, especially if you're a newer agent. It's nice. One second. If you're looking for tours that you can do on your own, for example, a home that's vacant, you want to just kind of practice getting in, see what's available in the market, get familiar with inventory. When you pull up the app, you can click schedule a showing. And then there's another icon right next to this one that says near me or something like that. And you can click on that, and then it will pull up any listings that are currently active that are near you. And so use that, find something that's vacant, and therefore you're not putting some seller out for a sample showing, and then go and tour that. It's great for social media content. And like I said, just some general practice. You can download that. It's just Showing Time. Additionally, though, please save this number. This is the Showing Time number. Like AJ mentioned, occasionally you will get out in the boondocks and you might not have cell service. Well, never fails. Those situations where you don't have cell service are also the situations where they have used what's called a Sentry lock, which requires Bluetooth access. And if you don't have internet or you don't have Wi-Fi, then we're not going to be able to connect to that. And so occasionally you might have to call Showing Time and say, hey, I don't have internet access. I can't get into this lockbox. Can you give me the 1-day code for that? And they have a code that they can provide for those situations that you can physically type in to the lockbox itself to get it open. So let's just do a few samples real quick. I'm going to show you guys MLS. I'm sure you've played around with it some, but I'm just going to show you some features. It very well might be exactly what you do, or you might learn something new. So when we are on a given listings page, shout out to Randy Jones. This is his listing. He's a choice agent with us. When you're on a given page for a listing, you can click schedule a showing. Now, when you're doing this, you can schedule an individual showing if you would like to, or you can schedule it by doing a tour. Anytime you go to click to book a tour for a given day, this dialog box will pop up with showing rules. I think it takes place once a day. So when you do this, you have to accept these terms. Namely, I'm going to provide the instructions provided by the list agent. And most importantly, I'm never going to be showing a home outside of my scheduled appointment time. Doing so is trespassing, and I will get a fine of $500 and also leave the property the way you found it. Yes, I agree. I'm going to carry on. So this is what it looks like if you schedule a single tour. For whatever reason, I just find that really overwhelming. I really like the other view, so I typically click add to showing cart. When you do that, you can then select a given date. Let's say I'm going to do it today. I can then select a buyer, or I can add a new one. Let's see if I have got myself. Now, this information is just for my knowledge only. The listing agent will never see the name of the buyer. This is just data that the showing service collects. And that way, on showing time, another feature that they have is I can go in and see how many tours or how many homes I've shown a given client. You can then go in and you can pick a time. Now, what we were talking about a second ago, whoa, okay, I know, I'm going to show them. What we were talking about a second ago, when you pull up a given address, you will have the option to either pick a time this way. Oh, I guess it shows it a number of times. Yes, I agree. And you can select the start time this way, and then the end time. Now, when you go to select it, anything that is light gray is obviously not available. Anything that has the box around it is. The end time is going to be whatever, like the max appointment time is going to be whatever they show it as. So it looks like their minimum or their maximum appointment time is 30 minutes. This is where you could leave that note to the list agent, AJ. So I can click save. If I wanted to do it a different way, I could also come in along the right-hand side, anywhere in the schedule, and click where I would like to do the showing. And same thing, it will automatically populate. Now, on the right-hand side, if there are any other showings scheduled, you will see them in kind of a light gray color. It doesn't look like this house has any showings scheduled for today, but if it did, we would be able to see it here. This black area is where it's blocked off. Every listing in general, I believe, starts showings at 8 or 9 a.m. and finishes showing at 9 p.m. If they have kind of this dark gray color, it means that they have blocked off showings during that time. And if you hover over it, it will give you an explanation of why. Oops. So if I'm hovering over this one, it'll just say, oh, I saw it a second ago. It says no showings. Well, I don't know. It's not coming up now, but a second ago it was. It'll say no showings during this time. Sometimes it will say, you know, kids are coming home from school and taking a nap. Showings will restart at this time, whatever the case may be. We can do it that way. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to mess up anyone's appointments. The other way to do it, though, is to do it in bulk. So if I'm going in, let's just make a scenario for ourselves. As you know, if you're on MLS, you can come over to the far right-hand side. If you click market and new, that's what you will see for whatever the newest listings are that given day. It's a great way to kind of check in and start your morning. If you're looking for a routine to be familiar with inventory, just kind of know that. But you can also request showings in bulk. So let's say I'm going through this and my client texted me a number of houses, or I'm just kind of picking some that I'm going to circle back to her about, whatever the case may be. Let's say that they're browsing in a number of areas and I'm trying to organize all of that in bulk. I can select the properties that I'm interested in, and I can then click more, or excuse me, actions, showing time, and it will take me to that same page. I'm going to add it to the showing cart that I have or create a new one. is going to bump on over. Now, the thing that I really love about this, real quick, let's just see. So this one, for example, you can see it has probably 3 or 4 showings there, 5. So this one has a lot of interest. This one is complete, or these ones are completely blocked off, which means no showings are available on that date. Okay, we'll have to see why. The other thing you can do though, which I really, really love, is clicking Smart Route. So before I do that, let me hop one down. So when you're taking a look at it, this is kind of what it looks like in general. And actually that's a pretty good route for us. But if by some chance those were in a totally random order, you can always click Smart Route. And when you do that, it will populate your information or your tour in the most efficient drive time. And like I said, that probably is the most efficient, considering what they've done. But if it's all over the place, this is a nice feature. Now, when you're doing this, you can see how long it would take to get from one appointment to the other. I typically will allow or accommodate about a 15-minute viewing for my clients. I feel like most people can get out the door in about 15 minutes. So when I'm doing this, for example, I would request this showing from 11 to 12, realistic, or 11:30 to 12. Realistically, though, I'm assuming we'll probably leave that house by around 11:45. If it takes us 20 minutes to get there, I probably can go ahead and request a showing. Just endlessly pops that up for about 12 to 12:30. That should give us enough time. Yes, I do have Sentry Lock access. If it is a Sentry Lock on the lock or for the lockbox, you will have to select that yes or no, you have access. And then I'm going to continue to do the same. So keep that in mind. You need to make sure you're doing a little math here. We need to make sure we're accommodating drive times. And then once you do that, you can then go in and click send request. Now, obviously I'm not going to do that, but just know that that's the case. Once I do that, I will get an automatic confirmation from anyone that has a go and show. Anyone that has appointment required, it will come through as showing request received. And then once it's confirmed, I'll get a showing request confirmed. Once it's confirmed, it will send the access instructions. Now, the reason that's so important is because especially if you have a number of showings booked, it's easy to misread that showing request received as confirmed and just texting your clients and be like, hey, we're good to go. And then you don't realize that actually we're not confirmed yet. We're still waiting to hear back. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. Yep, I can absolutely send you a recording, Eric. All right, so I'm not going to request those. Oops. Anyone have any questions about any of that tour stuff that we just talked about? Or any functionality questions about MLS in that regard? Most agents use Sentry Lock or a combination lock. My old board let us check out Sentry Lock boxes. I think it's probably about like a third of agents use Sentry Lock. So it's definitely pretty prevalent, but I find that most people tend to use combination locks. I believe MLS provides, I believe our region provides them to rent out, but I'm not positive. I will double check on that for you.
And also, Kate,
Mm-hmm.
if there are like overlapping appointments, and if already one agent or one family is inside, and we can just get in, right? We don't have to do anything. And when we are done with appointment, we can just let them know, the other agent, that, hey, I'm done. That's about it.
Great question. Yes. So technically you should be able to just go on in. Most of the time, what I will do is if I know for sure that there's an overlapping appointment, when I go into the house and I unlock the door, I will typically just go ahead and put the key back in the lockbox and close the lockbox, especially if it's a Sentry Lock one, because that one tracks who opens it and closes it and when, because I want to make sure that the agent walking in when I'm there, that I know for sure that they're an agent and they have access instructions. So I like to make sure that they have the opportunity to open the lockbox. But yes, you can just go ahead and come in. Normally, I'll just kind of do like a courtesy knock and be like, hey, knock, knock. Like, we've got an overlapping showing. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Just come on in. Some people will get a little attitude about it and be like, we're finishing up, and just be like, all right, wonderful. We'll start upstairs. Definitely give them a little space if you can, or tell them, hey, we're going to start outside, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. But yes, you should be able to walk in. I have ran into a few situations very minimally where an agent has an appointment before us and we go to walk in, it's an overlapping appointment. and the agent has gone inside and locked the door behind them and kept the key inside, you are not allowed to do that. It is not your ability as a buyer's agent to dictate whether they will allow overlapping or not. So yes, you can just go on in, but just let them know that you've got an appointment so you don't spook them. They may ask for your license number or something like that, but normally as long as you're opening the lockbox and they can see that obviously you've access instructions, then you should be good to go.
So you're saying if it is a overlapping situation and I open the lockbox first, so even before I finish my showing, you want me to put the key back inside the Sentry lock and close it?
It's up to you. If it's Sentry lock and I know that there's an overlapping showing, yes. If not, typically what I'll do is I'll just keep the lockbox open or close it and scramble it. And I'll just bring the key inside, but leave the door unlocked. And I typically will just put the key on like the little side table or something that's right inside the door so that I never misplace it. And then if you do that and therefore the door isn't locked and no one has to use the lockbox to get in, just make sure that if you are the agent that's welcoming someone else in, that you say, hey, are you the agent? Like, you know, ask them which of these people is the agent and just ask for their name, just so that you kind of cover your bases. Because I have had situations where I've been showing a home and random people will walk in. I guess they think it's an open house or something, and then come to find out that neither of them actually are an agent. So just to some extent cover your bases. You don't necessarily have to lock it. It's just kind of an added measure. Obviously, if you do that, then you would have to unlock it again before you leave so you can lock up the house with the key. But it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All righty. I know we talked about it. I just want to continue to harp on it. This one is mainly for our clients and making sure they know, but really and truly, seriously, we cannot visit properties outside of our designated appointment time. Doing so is called trespassing. Now, when we say this, it does not mean that I'm only talking about going in to see the house. This means that our clients cannot drive up to the property or look in the windows. Can you imagine how creepy that is? Like, you might think it's vacant and there might be people living there that just don't have a car out front right now. You know, you can by all means drive past the property, but you cannot physically, don't go stand in their yard. You can't go park in their driveway and scope it out the day before, you know. So if you're texting your clients, I would recommend, if it's an area they're not familiar with, or if they've given some criteria of like, it has to be a quiet neighborhood or whatever, like something that we as an agent aren't going to be dictating to them, something that we want to make sure they see for themselves, I absolutely will say, hey, why don't you go drive that area tonight? Let me know if you're still interested in this property. I just want to make sure it kind of fits the vibe of what you're looking for. But just know, you know, obviously you can't pull in the driveway. The sellers are still living there. Just make sure you kind of reiterate these things, because people, especially as we head into the spring market, as things get more competitive and there might be more buyers in the field, might be more showings, people are going to want to be putting eyes on things quickly. And if you do that, you know, just make sure you're not trespassing. You get the point. But it happens to all of us when we hear someone be like, oh yeah, I came yesterday. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like I said, once you are confirmed or once you have requested a showing, you will get push notifications. These are based on the settings that you've established with showing time. It has been a while since I started my showing time stuff. And so I have since updated it. I believe that when you first start with showing time, it will send you an email and give you a phone call, an automated phone call to let you know when things are confirmed or declined. I typically set it to email and text, but you can go in and change those settings on your showing time. Just as a heads up as well, in case you ever need to look at it, you can come in to resources and showing time. And this will take you to the showing time dashboard. So obviously I showed you how to schedule showings, but if you want to come in and look and be like, how many have been confirmed? How many are we waiting on? How many am I showing tomorrow? You can do all of that here. And this is also where you can edit that information in terms of how they reach out to us. Now, working our way towards showings, one thing that we are a big fan of is being a resource for our clients and providing the things that they might not necessarily think of when they're in the home. And so a lot of us will have what we call a grab bag to keep in our car with some additional supplies or items that just might help with the showing or help answer some questions that they have. So some common examples of this are going to be tape measures, for instance, or a flashlight. It's helpful in case someone wants to know the size of a room and that listing agent hasn't put the measurements up, or if you're in a situation like mine where they've got an 80-inch TV and we need to see if that one wall will accommodate it in between those two windows. The flashlight is great for showing like the crawl space and things like that, or taking a peek up in the attic. One of the ones that I actually heard the other day on Coach Kat's training, which I hadn't thought about and I loved, is the idea of an agent keeping a flat sheet in their car. Keeping one that's either a queen or a king or something like that, or even having multiple, but that way if you're showing a vacant home and they walk in and they're like, I mean, it looks great, but I just don't know if our furniture will fit in here. Like if they're in the bedroom and they're like, we have a king bed, we aren't gonna get rid of that. We need to make sure it would fit in here. Having that as an option to just kind of lay out, and so they can kind of visually see it and possibly even walk around it and get a feel for the lay of the land with it. I think that's a really creative idea. As silly as it sounds, I feel that homes actually feel larger when there's furniture in there because you can get a feel for how it lays out. I thought that was really nice. One of the other things that I have included is a coat hanger, because you'll run into those situations where it has a pull down attic access, and sometimes they have the cord stuck up or it's just the little loop. And ideally they have the little pull down rod stuck in the laundry room or something like that, but sometimes they hide it. And so I will use that to kind of pull it down and snatch that hook so we can take a look in the attic if they would like to. What are some things that you guys have thought of for something like this? Is there any standard practice that you've had in your business so far, or ran into any agents that have mentioned something like this?
I need to put a marble in my bag, because some of the older houses, when the foundation, you can tell that it's not settled, but exactly how unsettled it is.
Right. It's a delicate balance because you don't want to like be busting it out in every situation, because every floor is gonna be a little wonky. But yes, especially those ones that are older that you are like, I really feel like it's leaning. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Anything else, you guys? Maybe even having some spare shoe covers or even a towel if it's a wet lawn might be nice, just to protect the home if you go in and it's a rainy day, something like that. Yeah. Now let's talk about preparing for showings. Let me start all of this off by saying, I always make the most work for myself. So I'm going to give you advice based on how I did it. It is a lot of preparation. It is a lot of paper. I don't know if it's necessarily what I would recommend all the time, but in my experience, although it's a lot to bring with me and although it sets up a lot of work for me for each showing, I always want to be walking into the property with as much information as I have so that I can sell it and answer as many questions as they have while I'm in the home. In my opinion, if they have to circle back for answers, I might not be able to close them as quickly as we need to, or they just might not think of something to reach out to me about. So that said, though, obviously it's a lot of work, and what you do on the front end is what they are going to expect in the long run. So whatever works for you, just find a rhythm and stick with it. I was always of the mindset, I'm going to bring the MLS sheet, I'm going to bring the property disclosure, anything they have in the document section, and I'm likely going to bring a CMA with me. It's just how I am. It's a lot, but that's how I am. On the other side of things, though, you could always just bring the MLS sheet, and just take a look at the disclosure, see if there's anything to note. If there is, just write it on there. HVAC 3 years old. That's all the information I have, and keep it moving, and just let them know on the front end when you're doing your buyer consultation, hey, I'm going to bring with me the MLS sheet for the home. But if this is a property that you're seriously interested in after we've toured it, let me know and I'll run a CMA for us and I'll send that over to you. Whatever your rhythm is, get in the process of it. Yes, AJ.
I got into a rhythm of emailing all the documents over before we actually went to go look at the house, because if I would tell my client, I would point out the main things on the like Residential Property Disclosure Act disclosure, and then I would point out the main things like the roof and stuff like that, HVAC. But then I would also tell them to go over, and if they had any questions, I would try to get any answers, get answers before we went and seen the house, because the way I was looking at it is it could be something in there that they didn't like. and then they might say, let's not go see it. Is it good practice to take hard copies with you, or?
It's totally personal preference. I love that idea. I love the idea of sending it to them. I'm just one of those people, like, I take forever to send emails. So in my mind, I'm like, I'd rather just get it to you. But I mean, I really like that idea. Save yourself time in the long run in terms of showings and weed them out. If it's something that, if they have a hard stop on this HVAC age or something, absolutely. And if that's kind of your rhythm, I love that idea.
It's actually worked out great for me, because I've had a couple clients, they would look up and say, yeah, I don't like this. Let's not go look at this property. And I ain't have to drive out there and waste time.
And if that would have been a deal breaker anyways, we're not missing out. Yeah, that's a great idea. Absolutely. Whatever works for you, do it. The idea of doing that and just putting it on your email, sending it to them, or even being out and about and just airdropping it to them when you're in front of them. Absolutely. I will say, if you do that, it's nice to do it in the way you did and send it in advance. My only hesitation would be if you send it to them kind of when you're in front of them, or if you don't bring anything on paper. I personally don't want to be on my phone in front of a client, because it looks like I'm doing something else or I'm texting someone when really I'm likely looking up information for them. So if you do that, that's totally fine, but I would still bring kind of your MLS sheet or something like that with you to reference, just so you're not pulling out your phone in front of them. But that said, find your rhythm, find what works for you, and just set that expectation with them. Hey, I like to minimize my paper usage. I'm going to send you an email in advance. So just know, if we're in a showing together and I'm looking at my phone, I'm just getting you the information on the questions that you asked. Just get ahead of it, whatever works for you. Absolutely.
And I have done that. Like, they'll ask a question and I didn't know it right off the top of my head. And I said, well, just hang on just a second. Let me pull it up. I'll tell them exactly what I'm doing. I'm pulling it up on my phone, so it don't look like I'm texting somebody else, and have somebody else has my attention right then. I always try to keep my clients informed on what's going on. I don't know. Nobody really taught me. I kind of just got my own rhythm on my own, and
that's all you need.
It's working so far, but I might start taking the hard copies with me as well as emailing it over, because I try to eliminate some drive time. If we ain't got to burn gas and drive, if you can see something on the property disclosure or the way the plat map looked. I had one client one time, he looked at the lot and the plat, and he was like, you know what? He's like, I don't really like the way this property is. There's something going in and splitting the property. Well, I rode by there and I knew what it was. It was a driveway. Somebody lived in the back side of the property, and the driveway, they owned the driveway, like a little slither of the land right there, and it broke the property up. And he says, well, we may go look at it. He said, but I'm not dying to go look at it. He said, I was like, all right. And then it went under contract with somebody else. So I was like, well, that just crosses that one out, and we ain't even got to drive and waste time.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yes. The only reason I like a hard copy as like an addition is mainly just because, especially if I know they're really interested in that property, is just to keep it front of mind. They're going to be more likely to circle back to it in the car or something if they have it in their hand. But they're still going to throw it away at some point. So totally up to you. I love how you do that. I am going to go in real quick and just show you guys where to find each of these details. I'm sure you know most of it, but let's just do it. So I've said it. When you're on MLS, there are a ton of ways to print things off. You can also download them as a PDF, or you can email them to a client. Or if you email it, you can always email it to yourself and then take that link and attach some documents. So what I typically will do in preparation for a showing is I'll do Print Plus. I'll do this one for myself. And then normally what I would do is do the TMLS buyer with agent one page. I'm just going to do a print preview for you guys so you can see what this looks like. Okay, so when you do that, the page that I take with me looks like this. So it has the directions, the remarks, and then the agent remarks, and all of the information that we need. It looks very similar to MLS. And it also has the agent's contact information, so I can quickly give them a call if I have any questions while I'm in the home or if something's going awry. Oh, and then actually, oh goodness, I apologize, you guys. It did it for all of the properties that I had selected. 1 minute, let's go back and do that. Okay. Okay, so print plus, buyer with agent. Oops. So when I do that, the one that the client will get looks like this. It has your headshot in the corner with your name and your phone number and your email. It doesn't have the agent remarks on there, and it's just nice and consolidated on one page. As I got more into the business, and once we were in the middle of COVID and things like that, honestly, a lot of the time I would send them the agent full, because I also wanted them to see the agent remarks. If there was something in there like offer deadline of 3 p.m. or some really specific instructions about what does or doesn't convey, I just wanted them to see it for themselves. Whatever your rhythm is, find it for you. You can find any documents in this little D icon. Ooh, this one has a lot. So in these types of situations, I would absolutely email this to my client and not print all of this off. Typically though, what I would bring with me would be a copy of the property disclosure and maybe the utility information. I likely won't bring the floor plan with me, but to AJ's point, that's a great item to send in advance. I would also love to send the HOA documents to my clients, especially if there's something really specific they're interested in. If I know for sure they want to add a fence, we need to see what the requirements are. If they want to add a shed down the road, whatever, it's just nice for them to get that. And HOA documents are pretty long, so I don't want to be printing those out, but I'll print a disclosure, maybe an update sheet or something like that if they have it, and then email the rest. Additionally, I might, depending on the client, I might look at this information, or if the home has been on the market for a while. This one obviously just hit the market, but if it had been on the market for a while, I'm going to click on the history, because I want to see if they've had any price reductions, if it went under contract previously and came back to market, anything like that. Now, I'm a little hesitant to bring all of this with me, just because sometimes it will show the history of the property in terms of the last sale. And it's a delicate dance with providing that to the client, because you want to show them the increase in equity that they could potentially gain over the long run. But for some reason, people are like, oh my gosh, they paid this much for the house and they're expecting this much, even if the price that they are currently asking makes total sense for the market. So it depends on the situation, but if it's been on the market a while, I might take a look. In this case, they had tried to sell it in summer of last year. It never sold, and they have since relisted it for a much lower price. Valuable information to have, especially if you have a client that's like, I just don't know for this price. You can say, well, they're pretty serious about selling. They've had a number of price reductions. If your client is actively talking about another discount and purchase price, and it's only been on the market one day and that's their history, my advice to my client is going to be, I don't know if we're going to win the house that way, especially with the first day on the market. Find what works for you. Now, real quick, I'm just going to do a short CMA for you guys, whether you bring this with you or not. It's a nice practice to have. I'm going to go into search and residential. I'm going to copy the address of the property. Typically, we'll go in and do all active, all pending, and all closed over the past 6 months. I'm going to make sure that the property type I'm selecting is the same as what I'm looking at. I believe this is a condo, but if you have any questions, you can scroll on down. Where is it? To property ownership type, it is a condo. I'm going to make sure I'm comparing like properties to like properties. Past 6 months. Now, I can either do a radius search for this property, or I can start with our subdivision. I'm probably going to start with the subdivision, especially since it's a condo. There might not be as many. So I'm going to go in and paste that in and select it. There's only 2 that have sold over the past 6 months. I probably want a few more than that if I can. Typically, if I'm running a fast CMA, these are 4 buyers. I typically want about 5 to 11 homes on there if possible, 5 to 7, kind of an ideal situation. To do that, I'm going to paste the address, make sure you add the city that it's in, and make sure you press enter. When you do that, it will drop a pin to the address of that property. You can then go into this area. Oops. I will normally do about a mile. Again, press enter, and it will do a radius around that. Then I can come back. We only have 3, so I probably will just use that. But typically I will continue to hone it down by square footage and age. So in this case, I'm going to copy the square footage. I'm going to paste it down below, and I'm going to buffer it on either side by a few hundred square feet. Depends on the size of the home. If it's a smaller home, the buffer on either side is going to be smaller. If it's a larger home, like 3,000 square feet, might do it 3,500 and 2,500. I'm going to do the same thing for the age. Our goal here is to compare like properties, active, pending, and sold over the past 6 months, comparable in age, size, and condition. So in this case, some people say 5 years. I honestly typically will do 10 years because it just makes most sense to me. And again, we only have 3. Now, if I have too many, I'm going to continue to narrow this criteria so that I have a lot less, and then vice versa. I might continue to do a bigger radius if needed. I'm going to click search. And just in general, if these are kind of all over the place, I might, if they weren't all in the same neighborhood, basically, I might go through and just click and make sure that they all look comparable. In this case, they pretty well do. I'm going to select the ones that I'm interested in. In this case, I'm going to click all of them, but you can go through and cherry pick them if you'd like. I'm going to click reports, CMA, and CMA summary. So this I will either bring with me or I'll email it to the client, whatever works for you. We are going to see active at the top, sold in the middle, and pending at the bottom if there are any. When we're referring to this, I like to pay attention to a number of things, mainly the list price to sales price and the ratio of that. I'm also going to pay attention to the price per square foot and the days on market. I obviously also want to make sure I'm kind of comparing apples to apples here, but in this case, it looks like most of the time when homes are going on the market in this neighborhood, it looks like they're pretty well selling for their list price. Honestly, with this one being the outlier based on the last summer's history. These sold for a lot more. Their price per square foot was more. So if I was touring this property with my client, obviously I would probably do a slightly bigger radius and just continue to hone in on all of it and click through the photos, see how all of it compares. But in general, my advice to my client would be, man, I think this house is priced very well. They tried to list it last summer. It didn't sell. They had a ton of price reductions. There have been 2, one in this neighborhood and one right around, or actually 2 in this neighborhood for a very similar size. Also, one is 3-bedroom, one is 2-bedroom that sold for a lot more and a lot higher price per square foot. I think it is priced perfectly. They are priced to sell this time. It just hit the market. We will likely have to be competitive. We'll probably have to go above list price to get it. If it's the first day or week on the market, if it sits for a little bit longer than that, we might have some room to be a little more competitive and ask for some concessions. Okay. Anyone have any questions about any of that? Do any of you guys do this for your clients currently, whether you do it and bring it with you or whether you do it in advance? Preparation. I know Amy kind of mentioned this in terms of what lockboxes are used. Get a little comfortable. I love communities. I love that you're touring some homes in advance for yourself, because honestly, getting familiar with the lock boxes can be a little bit trickier than what it seems. You will have a number of different lock boxes that you will encounter. The most common 2 are going to be ones that kind of look like this, where it's just a combination lock that has 4 little digit codes that you can scroll to the correct number. You'll then press down on the little latch and it will open up. A little tip of the trade, I tend to use my key to press down and open that latch just because it can be a little sticky and I just don't want to break a nail, but I'll use my key to kind of open that. You will also run into Sentry Lock, which, like I said, uses Bluetooth access. You will pull up the Sentry Lock app. You have to download it. So make sure if you have a showing confirmation that says Sentry Lock, make sure you download the Sentry Lock app. I think they make you do that in the MLS training, but I'm not positive. To download that, you're going to have your 4-digit code. You will then go in and you will press the enter button on the Sentry Lock lockbox in front of you. And then on the homepage, it will populate lockboxes near you. You're going to select the one that is the property that you're interested in. You're going to put in your 4-digit code, and then you'll hear it be like, and it'll open. And then the key will be inside of there. Those are the most common. I will say, though, I have run into one of the ones that's a little circle that you have to turn. the first time I did it was in front of a client. Thank goodness my dad had just kind of like pounded it into us as kids of how to use the lock on our shed growing up, of like, go past this number and then go back. But thankfully I nailed it. Other than that, it had been middle school since I'd had to open a combination lock of that sort. So as silly as it sounds, go on YouTube and watch a few just to make sure that you get your rhythm, because there's nothing more embarrassing than not being able to get a lockbox open, or even getting a key stuck in the lock in front of your clients. You're like, I promise I do this every day. I promise I can open doors, right? Like, I'm not completely incompetent. So just know that. Also, on that note, talking about our grab bag, having some WD-40 with you in your grab bag or in the car can be very useful. Occasionally you will run into situations where the key just gets a little stuck. So if you run into that, having some WD-40 can be quite the lifesaver. AJ, what you got?
I agree with you. Them turn dials, where you gotta spin it and go like so many times to the right, so many times to the left. They're the most aggravating out there. And there's people out there still using them. I'm like, upgrade your boxes here. And then the Century Lock box, you really do. If you haven't messed with a Century Lock box, I agree with you. Go out there and go tour a house and find one with a Century Lock box, because I had to do that before. I actually did it before I started seeing the Century Lock boxes on showings, and I still have trouble with them sometimes. Like, I'll be like, hold on, I can't get this thing, it ain't working right. Just give me just a second, but it is embarrassing when it don't pop that first time, and it's like, you got people looking at you like, oh, I hit something wrong or something. I mean, I would get familiar with them, definitely.
A great advice. Look for one that has a Century Lock, which can be a little bit difficult. But I mean, if you go into MLS and you're trying to request a few showings to tour, like I said, when you go to request the time, it will make you confirmed you have Century Lock access, yes or no. So that's one way you can kind of double check. Yeah, I mean, it never fails. If you haven't done it in advance, you will either have to download the app when you're in front of someone, or it will want to update when you're in front of someone. And it will always be a situation where your internet is like really low connection and it will take forever. So yeah, get ahead of it if you can. Love it. Thanks. Pay attention to the showing instructions. Is there an alarm? Do they ask that you remove shoes? Is there a pet? Are you supposed to leave certain lights on? Is it a property that an investor is selling and there's going to be a tenant sitting in the living room? Whatever the case may be, get familiar with it, but mainly the alarm situation. If there is an alarm, I typically will write alarm on the top of my MLS sheet and either put that information on my page, or just make sure that I am paying attention to my showing instructions on my phone so that I can run in real quick and turn it off. Those are the worst, especially if you don't know that there's going to be an alarm. I will own it. I've had a situation where the alarm went off for whatever reason. I will say though, their keypad was all the way upstairs and they did not say that. So that's on them, and the code they provided did not turn it off. So not ideal. Most of the time, if there is an alarm system in the home, the sellers will deactivate it if they know there's a showing, but occasionally they won't. So make sure you have the information ready for you so that you're not the reason the sellers are getting a phone call. But regardless, the main key here is to make sure that we're leaving the home as we found it. So if we show up and all of the lights are on, that pretty well means that they want all of the lights on when we leave. And that's just to make life simple, especially as we go into the spring market where there's more and more showings kind of back to back. The sellers don't want to worry about someone walking into a dark home. Now, preparing for the showing, this is, again, one of those things that find your rhythm. It's not going to be for every property. It's not sustainable for it to be for every property. But if it is a property that your clients are incredibly interested about, or if they're just the type of people that are always going to ask, are there any offers for almost any house, even if they're not interested, call the listing agent and just see, hey, are there any offers on this property? I see in the MLS that the fridge is conveying. Are they open to the washer and dryer conveying with the right offer as well, right? Ask about appliances. Ask them, are there any, obviously I know financial terms are the most important, but are there any other key terms that the sellers are really looking for, or anything else that would really strengthen our offer to the sellers? And then additionally, I want to know what the seller's plan is for making a decision. Hey, have you guys made a plan for when you'll make a decision? Are your sellers the type of people that would not really like an offer deadline or like a time addendum on the offer, or do you see that urgency as appealing? whatever the case may be. You know, if you guys get an offer today, are your sellers the type of people that are willing to make a decision today? Or are they of the mindset that they really want to hold out through the weekend and see what they get? Right? Ask them a few things so you can set your clients up for success. There's nothing worse than going in and thinking that a seller would make a decision quickly and your buyers rush. And then what do you know, they end up holding out all weekend. Now, I'm still an advocate for being one of the first people in the door and one of the first offers in hand, but just kind of knowing that in advance and letting your clients know can be quite useful. Now, when it's time for the showing, first and foremost, be on time. Be there a little bit early, have whatever you plan to bring with you ready, or at least the knowledge of what the different systems are in the home. But when they're there, make sure you just encourage them to make it their own. And so this is kind of what AJ is talking about. The key to showing is not to overthink it. I'm not here to be like, look at this granite, like I'm on HGTV, right? Like I'm here to just let them do their thing. Honestly, even though I'm a little bit of a talker, I just keep my mouth shut. When we're walking the door, I'm like, oh, looks wonderful. Let me know what you guys think. I might make a few comments here and there, but I'm waiting to gauge what their interest level is, whether they love it, whether they're thinking about it, whether they absolutely hate it. And then I'm going to meet them where they are with that. So speaking from experience, you're not going to walk in and be like, smells like dog, right? Because honestly, they might not even notice. And they might have a dog, or maybe they do, and they love the layout of the house, whatever, with good time. If they clean the carpets, then that smell will go away. Who cares about it, right? Like you don't want to offend people when it's not our house anyways. So just kind of step back, let them explore it. I will kind of follow them slightly, but I'm letting them get a lay of the land. I have also had people that I'm like, just walk through your day in this house. Does it work for you functionally in terms of what your life is, what your flow in a given day is? See if it works for you in that regard. Now, some agents are of the mindset that they're going to go in advance and turn on all the lights and make sure everything kind of looks the way it should before your clients walk in. I'm the opposite of that. I will get there early, but I'm sitting in my car and I'm going to be walking in at the same time they are, because honestly, I want them to get an authentic reaction out of me, right? Like if we walk in and I'm like, ooh, woof, they didn't prepare at all. If we walk in and we go into the, it's one of those plans where there's 2 bedrooms up front and then a bathroom in the middle. And if they have stuff all over the counters and their toilet seats are up and their shower curtains back and there's stuff everywhere, and be like, wow, they were in a hurry to get this listed, or wow, they should have done a little staging, because I'm a strong believer that the way that people take care of the things you can see says a lot about how they take care of the things you can't see. And so if you are going to sell your largest financial asset, wouldn't you want to take some time to stage it, or at least sweep everything off the counters and stick it in the cabinet below so that it really shines? And if you aren't willing to do that, if you aren't willing to do these small paint touch-ups for the scuffs along the wall of the stairs, are you also the type of person that did HVAC maintenance twice a year? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not, and so how did the seller maintain the home, and what does that tell me about how they maintain the other items? I kind of want them to see it. I think that's about it. Now, when I'm in the home, I'm really and truly, I think I'll get into this in the next slide, but I'm just really trying to gauge what their interest is and to advise them financially on the home. Is there anything that's going to cost them money in the long run? Is there anything that's catching my eye for an immediate cost right now, or that might play an impact on their loan? And are they realistic in knowing that every house has a roof, every house has an HVAC? Let's see where this one falls in the scale of things. AJ, yes.
As long as lines of, when I go to show a house, I like to talk too, but I don't really talk a lot. I'll point things out if I see something that needs to be pointed out to my clients. But I kind of get in the mindset of the house is going to sell itself.
Yep.
And you don't really need to talk it up to sell the house. Then I've been in some houses and the client will be like, they have smoked in here, because I'm out in the country, so people have smoked in the house. Might have been years ago and they might have quit, but you can still smell it. And I might smell it faintly, or there's been times that I didn't smell it, but I was like, yeah. The client will be like, do you smell? I say, yeah, I smell a little something, but I can't tell if it's smoke or not, because it'll smell differently. And these are older homes, of course. So, you know, who knows if they've been smoked in? I mean, they might have been built in the 40s and people were smoking in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, up until recently, people started quitting. So yeah, I just kind of go with the mindset of, and I don't know if it's wrong, but that's just kind of my style, is like the house is going to sell itself. I mean, matter of fact, one I just closed on last month, I was just happened to start scrolling through the MLS and seen it hit, seen it as soon as it hit the market, sent it to my clients. My clients loved the pictures, and they were like, well, we really like this house. And I said, okay. He's like, I might have to throw an offer. I said, nope, we ain't gonna throw no offer in without actually looking at it.
Mm.
And then he went out there and looked at it, and he says, you know, I really do like this. I'm gonna put an offer in. I said, okay. And so I'd already had paperwork drawn up because I didn't realize, you know, it used to take me a lot longer on dot loop until the tricks of the trade that you showed in the class. And he ended up getting the property on a multiple offer that they had on the property. He ended up getting the property. He absolutely loves it. He loved it. It just fit all his criteria. You know, and I even pointed out, I said, hey, it's a cinder block house though. He said, well, what does that matter? I said, well, it don't matter if you like it. I said, it might be a little cooler in the wintertime. I said, it might cost you a little bit more to heat. And he's like, well, that don't matter. He said, I love the view out the kitchen window. I love the property. He said, this is what I'm looking for. I said, all right. So, I mean, he ended up going up on the contract. I actually checked in with him a few days ago. He said, and I actually love living out in the middle of nowhere. He said, it's funny. He said, when we go to town, we say, we're going to town. I said, yeah, you sound like every other local out there. That's what they say, is we're going to town.
How cute. I love that. What a perfect story. Because yes, first and foremost, I agree with you. We're not here to sell the house. I always tell people, I'm not here for this house. I'm here for you. I don't care if you like it. Like, if you love it, amazing. But I'm here for you. It's not my job to tell you what to love or what not to love. And I mean, to your point, it'll sell itself. And also, what a fun story. I love that. How cute. But one of the things that I really loved is exactly this right here. When you mentioned, when we're talking about touring a home, one of the things that we do want to do is focus on the benefits of a given feature. Like, if we're going to mention anything, focus on the benefit of it or the downside of it instead of the feature itself. So to your point, talking about the cinder blocks being like, well, you know, just something to know. It's going to be a little cooler. You might have a slightly higher heating bill. What, like, that is the factual information relating to that feature or that finish. And then what they decide to do with that information is up to them. The only time I will make an exception to any of that is if I smell, for example, moisture. Like, if I'm walking in, I'm like, hey guys, just as a heads up, it smells a little damp in here. Do you guys smell that? Do you feel like that's the case? Because if there's too much moisture in this home, then we might need to think about mold or mildew, which can be a little intimidating. Now, that's a dramatic situation. That happens very rarely, more so when I am looking in the crawl space and I open the door and I'm like, oh, it smells a little damp down here. Just know that, you know, I'm making note of things and just kind of pointing them out. For example, if I'm touring a home and it has solid surface countertops, they might be like, oh, I wish this had granite, or, you know, I might update this down the road. Absolutely. Do whatever you love and to make it your own home. I will say though, I had solid surface countertops in my home. I thought for sure I would replace those bad boys, but I never did because they were so functional. They don't scratch, they're easy to clean. I don't know, I kind of like it. I'll probably use them until I feel like I have to replace everything. Or if I'm touring a home and it has a knee wall instead of the kind of typical metal spindles on the stairs, I'll say, and they're expecting, for instance, I'll be like, this is actually really nice. It's one less thing you have to baby proof, although the metal rods can be really beautiful. It is one more thing that you have to think about when you've got a little one, you know, just focus on those little details. Man, it looks like they added new carpet. That can easily cost you $2,500 to $4,000, $2,500 to $4,000. Like, it's really nice that they did that. It's one less thing for you to have to do down the road. When we are in the home, we want to be putting eyes on as much as possible. I'm not an inspector, but I am here to protect my clients. The biggest expenses that they're going to have, the biggest deal killers once you go under contract, are going to be those big ticket items that are going to cost you a lot of money when you have to replace them. That's going to be things like your HVAC, your roof, moisture in the crawl space. We also want to be taking a look at plumbing and electrical, but obviously I can't see behind the wall. So until then, I'm kind of paying attention to whatever I can see. I'm a strong believer in relaying to your clients that what you see in the home is the condition you're going to get. And so your offer needs to reflect whatever concessions or adjustments make you comfortable enough to accept this property in the condition that it is in at the time of our showing. We are absolutely going to find additional items in our inspection, but that doesn't give us any leverage for negotiating with the sellers. We will absolutely try, but I need you to know, again, reminding you of our buyer consultation, sellers are not required to do anything. So whatever our offer looks like, whatever we see here right now, we need to take into account. So if I'm walking around and I see that this HVAC is 15 years old, I'm going to say something. Hey, it looks like they put no representation in the disclosures about the age of the HVAC. It looks pretty old, but I will say, man, like the older ones actually kind of crank the longest. So just know our inspection report will say that it's at the end of its life. They'll likely note some rust or something like that, which is, again, standard with the age of it. We just need to know that the age of a given item does not warrant a repair, does not warrant a replacement, and does not warrant a concession. So if we are seeing this right now, we need to make sure that our offer is comfortable considering that. And I need you to know that you need to budget some money in the relatively near future because you're going to have to replace this pretty soon. Right. I want to make sure that we aren't going under contract. And then as soon as we get under contract, they're asking for an $8,000 new HVAC system. It's not how we play this game. Things like that. I'm also going to be looking at the ceiling. I'm going to see if there's any watermarks that could indicate a leak. I'm going to be noting anything that could come up on the inspection. One of the items that I will see very commonly is masonite siding. For instance, if you're touring older homes in Cary or Raleigh, it's got masonite siding. So as we're walking up to the home, I'll just kind of tap on it and I'll say, hey guys, looks like the exterior of this home is masonite. Are you familiar with that at all? And what that means in terms of maintenance? Like, I don't know. All right, here's what you need to know about it. Masonite in essence is pressed particle board. It is wood and then you paint over it. So wood rot is very common. It means it also requires a lot of maintenance. You have to be making sure that you stay ahead of it because if not, moisture penetration is pretty easy. And so if you have to replace the siding, it's going to be quite expensive. I just need you to know what you're getting into. With this type of house, you can expect to have some pretty notable marks on your inspection regarding moisture penetration and or wood rot. We'll walk the exterior of the home and let's make sure that you feel comfortable with that. Anything like that, I'm going to be making a note of. One more example, and then I'll move on. I also like to make note of things that are going to be notes in the inspection. And so I'll say, you know, our inspection report is kind of our honey-do list for once we close. It's to make sure we understand what we're getting into and to make a plan for what we're going to do once we're in the home. So one thing that I want you to know is on this door, for example, if it is one of the ones that has a deadbolt, but the deadbolt doesn't just have the switch that goes back and forth, but instead actually has a key spot in it on the inside, for instance, I'll point that out and I'll say, hey, just as a heads up, I know this is really small, but this is going to be on your inspection report. This was up to code at the time that this home was built, likely. It's normally common in older homes. But now it will come up on your inspection report as needing replacement. They do ask that you do the little switch type just because it can be a fire hazard. If there was ever a fire, you're in here looking for the key. I know people get hesitant because they don't want to have the switch and just have someone be able to break through their window and turn the lock. But at the same time, we want to be protecting you. Just know that that'll come up on the inspection report. You're going to want to change your locks once you move in anyway. So just put that on the list and just know to expect it. Things like that. AJ, are there any that you want to add or anything that you've seen?
No, I think you about covered it. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm trying to think, and it's hard to think when you kind of put on the spot a little bit. But,
all right, no worries. Let me know if you think of anything. I just also, and I apologize, last class, it's hard to do your buyer consultation when you're not actually in front of a client. But one of the things that I always like to mention is our inspection reports are not pass fail in North Carolina. So we're not going to get our inspection and say, oh, X, Y, and Z failed inspection. No, they're just making a note of what we can expect and what we can do. So make sure people know that, because that is a perfect example. That lock, for instance, was up to code at the time that the home was built. It is now out of code. It doesn't mean that the sellers have to do it because it is out of code. It just means that it is noticed to us. I'm also going to be talking about money when I'm in the home. Again, I'm going to talk about anything that could cost them potentially once they close or in the long run. Be like, this roof has only about 5 years on it. That's almost new. You probably have another 15 years. That's a great investment. I don't even know if you guys will be in the home that long. We're going to talk about the pricing of it. That's where that CMA comes really in handy. It's just nice to have something in writing to refer to. And again, we're just going to kind of gauge things, and it just reminding them every house has a roof or an HVAC that's going to need replacing. Every home is at different points in systems life cycles. Let's just see where those are. That said, any conversations we have regarding the home in general, but especially money, make sure they take place outside of the home, and especially just closer to your car. It is very possible that the sellers may have cameras inside their home, although we do this every day. Most people do not. And so it understandably is quite concerning to have random people walking through your house all the time. And so people might have cameras inside, just keeping an eye on things they are legally not supposed to listen, but I'm sure a lot of people do. And a lot of people also have Ring doorbells. So even if you step outside, make sure you're stepping further away so they can't hear you. If you're going to talk numbers, just kind of lay everything out on your trunk or something and just talk to people there. Following the showing, keep in mind throughout all of this, actually, but especially afterwards, we are not just in relationship with our clients, but we are also in relationship with the listing agent. Even if this is not a house that our client is interested in, because we are real estate professionals and we are growing our business, and we want to make sure that if there is anything we can do down the road to secure a property for our clients, that we are doing it. And that can come from having a good relationship with other agents, and other agents knowing that you are good to work with. So in my mind, that means that I am communicating, that I am prompt, and that I inform people in the way that I would hope to be informed if I was a listing agent. So even if my client isn't interested in that house, I want this listing agent to know that if I do end up writing an offer on any property they have in the future, that they would want to work with me. So after I leave a showing, I'm going to be following up with the agent and making notes. Now, this can happen in a number of ways. Most commonly, I'll just text the agent, say, hey, thank you for allowing us to show your property at X, Y, and Z address. My clients really liked it. I'll likely be submitting an offer later this afternoon. Will you just let me know if you get any offers in hand, or if your sellers decide to make a decision quickly? I should have it to you in a few hours. Or thank you so much for allowing us to show the property. Unfortunately, my clients weren't interested. I'll leave feedback on MLS that you can pass along, but we really appreciate your sellers allowing us the opportunity to tour it. Whatever the case may be, just let them know, because again, us as agents do this all the time, but when a seller is opening their home to random people and they have 10 showings in a given day and they don't hear anything from anyone, and that listing agent is like, I don't know, like no one has given feedback, but we don't have any offers in hand, that's not really great advice. And it can just make life a little difficult. Understandably, the sellers want to know what's going on, and you never know what conversation the listing agent is trying to have with their clients that our feedback could help with. So just follow that process. When you're on showing time, you can go in and do feedback. I was going to show you, but since I don't have any showing scheduled, I don't know if it will let me. But when you're on here, you can provide feedback based on the showings that you've done by clicking feedback. Listings I have shown, and anything you have will show up here. You will then click the little bubble and follow the prompts. Most of the time it has kind of a standard template, and it will ask, how do you rank the showing on 1 to 5 compared to everything you've seen, like poor to great? How do you think it's priced? Too low, just right, too high? Is your client interested? Whatever, like it'll ask a number of questions. So that one question about pricing is incredibly important that we as buyers agents provide feedback on, because especially if we think it's overpriced, providing that feedback, or even in the comments, just saying my clients would love this home. They love the location. The sellers did an amazing job staging it. We think it's priced perfectly. Unfortunately, it's just a little too far for them, but we appreciate it. Like, make sure they know if it is something they can change, or if it's something that they can't change. If it's something layout related, it is what it is. It just didn't work for them. But if it's priced incorrectly, and we are the third person to provide the feedback saying it's priced too high, then that listing agent can have a conversation with their sellers. AJ, yes.
I've actually had listing agents, like I'll go show their listing, and I literally finish up with my clients, start heading in a different direction, get about a mile, 2 miles down the road, And I've actually had listing agents call me and ask for feedback, like ask me questions about the house and how did your client like the house? And,
Oh,
you know, I was like, well, I mean, that's kind of being proactive right there, because not everybody leaves it on showing time.
exactly. A lot of people don't. And I mean, I will say I have my request for feedback turned off. I still will go into MLS and provide that feedback, but if you don't turn it off, it will send you endless notifications asking for feedback. So I think a lot of people turn it off. And so, especially in like the market that we had over the winter, where it was just not many buyers, comparatively speaking, and a decent amount of inventory compared to COVID times, basically. And listing agents were reaching out, being like, is there anything you can do? You know, and as a listing agent, I always was in the practice of just, this is obviously completely unrelated, but just know when you become a listing agent, I typically will draft a text in my note section that just says, hey, you know, with a little blank spot so I can fill in their name. Thank you so much for scheduling a showing at my listing of blah, 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 like 123 Main Street. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know while you were in the home or anytime afterwards, or if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to be a resource with my contact info, because I want them to know if they have any questions or they have any interest, reach out to me. And I want them to have that on their phone. So anytime someone books a showing, I just copy and paste that and send it to them. But yeah, you know, some agents will reach out. Also, a little side note, as you're showing homes, you know, as you start showing more and more and more, this can be a little tricky, but if you can, I would recommend just getting in the rhythm of when you're on your CRM after you've shown a home, go in and update your client's profile and add a note for yourself. We toured these 3 properties. They weren't interested in these 2 because of the drive time. They really loved this one because of the backyard, whatever the case may be, because hopefully they'll end up buying in the next few showings, but it is possible that they might take a break and we might end up helping them in a year. And if that's the case, I want to circle back and remember what I showed them and what their thoughts were, because as silly as it sounds, as agents, we forget what we've shown because we've seen so many houses and they all start to run together, especially what client saw what. So add some notes so you have something to refer back to as well. Again, even if the home is vacant, it is someone's house, so leave it how you found it. If anything gets moved, make sure you let them know. If the lights are on, leave the lights on. If you are going to be touring a property around 7:30 or 8 and it's starting to get dark and you know that it is a vacant home, maybe reach out to the listing agent. Again, building that relationship, showing courtesy and saying, hey, just so I know, it looks like we're going to be the last showing. Would you like me to leave the lights on or do you want me to turn them off? You know, if it's a vacant home, they may want the lights on, but they also might not want them on if the blinds are open, so people can just see right in and see that it's empty. Or maybe they do want it to look lived in, you know, so ask them. If something happens when you're in the showing, get ahead of it. We are human, we are not perfect, things happen, but we do need to own it. I was in a showing once, thankfully it was at the end, but I went to lock the door and put the key in the lockbox and it fell out of the lockbox, and the front deck was wood, and they didn't have a little mat on the front deck. And so it fell right through the cracks under the deck. And so I had to call the listing agent and be like, hey, I'm so sorry. Do you have an extra key for this house? Because I just dropped the key under here. And honestly, I'm not crawling under the deck to get it. So sorry, you know, but just let them know if anything happens. Especially if the home is vacant, let them know if something looks off to you. I've walked in a home before and it didn't have a stove. And any home in North Carolina, in order for it to get a loan, has to have a stove. And so I called the agent. I was like, hey, are you guys replacing this? Did you know this is missing? And I hate to say it because I don't want to even manifest that for anyone, but it had been stolen. And they had no idea. So just kind of, again, having a common courtesy. When you're in the home, make a note of anything that is in there that would convey or what doesn't convey. And if your clients are interested in things conveying, take a picture of them. We want to be very specific. I know people hear it all the time, but especially with appliances and things like that, when we're making a note about personal property in our offer, we want to be being as detailed as possible. Some people will put the serial number in there. When I'm writing an offer in the personal property section, I'll normally say something along the lines of side-by-side stainless steel refrigerator that was in the home at the time of showing on the 7th of February, 2023 to convey at no cost to buyer. Something like that. And like I said, take a picture of it so that I have proof of what was in the home. If you are going to be asking for laundry items, take a picture of them or at least note them. If it is one of those laundry rooms that's just a sliding door in the middle of the hallway, if it's vacant, it can be very easy to miss that and be like, man, was there a washer dryer in there? It's embarrassing to make an ask for the washer and dryer when they weren't in the home, so just make a note of those items so you can cover your bases and truly work for your client. We don't want to just be putting fridge in that request, because technically they could come in, take out that really nice stainless steel one and add in some super old one. And when in doubt, write it in your offer to purchase. Like we talked about, technically certain things should convey, like the TV mount, curtain rods, but not curtains. A good example is like the front porch swing. Anything that seems kind of questionable, if your people do or don't want it, write it in there. Another example would be floating shelves in a living room or something like that. Technically it's affixed to the wall, so it should convey, but if you really don't want it, or you really want to make sure that it does come, then make sure that you add that. Another thing, similar to what AJ was talking about, pulling up your phone occasionally to provide additional information. Again, I'm not an app person, but this is an app I really recommend. It's iMaps for Wake County. When you download this, the nice part about it is it has a feature where you can search for the property. It'll pull up the plat according to the GIS map for that county. You can then click on the location services button, and from there it will ping in general where you are. So it will show the boundaries of the property, and then it will have like a little hovering blue dot based on where you are on the property. So if you get to a showing, it's some, half-acre lot, it's gorgeous, your clients are really interested, but they want to know how far back the property goes. Let's say it's fenced in and they want to know if that property line goes beyond the fence line. If the sellers haven't provided a plat map, I'm going to be like, you know what, give me just a minute, let me double check, and I'll pull that up and I'll physically walk the property with my clients and be like, this isn't a survey, this isn't completely accurate, but from what I can tell, it looks like it goes beyond this property by another 5 feet or so, whatever the case may be. Now, one thing to note in terms of property boundaries, very often the side boundaries of a house are going to fall in the middle of where utility boxes are. So if you're looking at a given property and it has a utility box kind of in the front left corner, for instance, very commonly your property line with the neighbor will fall kind of right in the middle of that. But this app does a good job of helping us. Yes, AJ.
Is that iMaps app an app just for Apple, or is there a different one for Android phone users?
That is a good question. I think it's for both. Let me pull it up real quick and just see if I can give you an example. I think it's for both because I've had people pull it up before. Definitely double check. Let me see if I can find it on my home screen so I can show you guys. Bear with me. I know it's on here because I just pulled it up, but now I don't see it. Okay, well, let's see. One moment, let me turn off my blurred view. Okay, so when you search for, I just searched for iMaps, this is what it will look like. It's just like a white background with a green map and then red details. You will likely have to search for iMaps Wake County or something like that. But let me know when you look for it, AJ. Let me know if you find it. I think it's for all of them.
Okay, because I was just wondering, but what you were talking about is just for Wake County, or does it have other counties that you can key in?
That one is just for Wake County. Now every county has their own like GIS website. I'm not sure if they have if they have apps as well, but you can go in for, well, at least on an Apple, at least, you can go into any given website and there's some ways that you can click through and click it so that it's like download this page as an app on your home screen or something like that. So it can just be like a shortcut to that, even if it's not truly an app. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out, like, Person County is so far behind technology times, and it ain't even funny. I'm just trying to think of maybe something that can be used up there in the rural areas that maybe run off a satellite, some kind of app, so you can, because I've had that question come up before of where the property line, does the property extend here? I mean, matter of fact, the last house that I closed on the end of last month, the new owner got in there, and now he's a very thorough person, and he was like, does this fence, is it on my property line? Because it was electric fence from where they've had horses on the property. And I looked at it and because at first we thought it might have been connected to the neighbor's fence, it just kind of ran the line. Then I started looking at it and I said, look, that fence right there is not connected to nothing. I said, if I had to guess, it was probably, it's probably not, it's probably yours. So, that's just the reason I was asking about the app.
Yeah. And I mean, those are great questions, because if it is the neighbors and it's on his lot, like, are they going to move it? Are they not? So let me look into Person County stuff and I'll see if I can find you something similar. And I'll let you know. Additionally, we want to make sure we're covering our bases with material facts. So anything that we can look up, then we need to be providing that to our clients, especially if we know that there is something specific. So for instance, I had a client that really wanted to add a fence to their yard. They might not necessarily want it to be something that covers their whole backyard because they've got a dog and they only want a certain part of it fenced off. I don't know, but they wanted it off to the side. Most HOAs will allow you to do one kind of in the back, but they might not necessarily allow you to fence the side yard, for example. So things like that, although certain items might not necessarily be a material fact, legally speaking to us, if it is a requirement to our client, then that becomes a material fact. So just kind of keep that in mind. And if there's a question that you have and you cannot find it, reach out to the listing agent. Again, we want to get disclosures that should be in MLS. Occasionally you will run into one that's not. Most of the time it's something that was just listed. Maybe the listing agent hasn't gotten around to uploading those yet, whatever the case may be. If you don't see the disclosures in the document section, reach out to the agent, because technically we want to make sure that they are included in the offer, as does the listing agent, because if we write an offer that does not have property disclosures attached to it, technically your client can terminate within 3 days of writing their offer if we have not yet received them. Now, when we are writing our offer, a few things. One, obviously, we want to include our standard offer to purchase contract. We also want to include any additional addenda that we might be providing. Most commonly, these are going to be things like a time addendum, which says that we are providing this offer and we would like a response by X day at X time. Otherwise, our offer is null and void. You can do this on the front end, or you can send it as a follow-up. If you walk in the home and there's something that you see that you really want done, you love the house, for instance, it looks great, but you really want to make sure it's professionally cleaned prior to closing, you can also add an additional provisions addendum that says that, maybe an appraisal addendum, for instance. Anything like that, we want to make sure we're adding all disclosures, and we also want to include a copy of our pre-approval or proof of funds. I like to download each of these documents individually and upload them to an email and send it to the agent. When I send that offer, I'm very passionate about this. I will include it in my email. I mentioned this at the beginning, but any recordings from classes this week will likely go out at the end of the week because Brian's out of town. But once I get it, I will send you guys a follow-up email, and in that I will include a template for my offer email. But in this, what I do is I just say, thank you so much to the sellers for allowing us to tour the property. We appreciate the opportunity to potentially work with you and your sellers. I then go into saying a little bit about my buyers. Now, I'm very careful. I don't cover anything fair housing related, but most commonly I'm referring to my buyers in terms of how long I've worked with them, how I know them, and how this property works for them. So it's my love letter of sorts from my buyer's perspective on why this house would work for them. So I'm saying things like, these are amazing past clients of mine. They're knowledgeable. This will be their second property. They've been looking for a few months now. They've really been interested in this neighborhood, but your house is the first one they've seen that they actually have been really interested in. They love the layout. They love the backyard, and they are so impressed by the way your sellers have maintained the property. Whatever, like adding a few things specific to the property to kind of lift the seller's ego and to tell them why you love it. And then I'm going to add a note saying my clients are educated about the inspection and appraisal process, and they are fully committed to closing. That's the line right there that I feel like really helps sell it, because I want them to know that, yeah, I understand how this process works, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to negotiate, but they understand what they're getting and they're ready to get to closing. I then go into bullet points and break down all of the key terms for the offer. And then I finish it up by saying, please let me know if there is anything we can do to strengthen our offer. And please let me know, please respond to this email to confirm receipt of this offer. want to make sure I'm covering all those bases. And like I said, same thing as we say about the houses, of the way you handle the little things says a lot about how you handle the big things. Me as an agent, if I'm providing this to a listing agent, I already stand out amongst the crowd because I'm taking all the heavy lifting. They can take a glance at my email and know all of the terms. They could simply forward that to their sellers if they wanted to. Instead of some agents that will simply send them and say, hey, please see our offer attached. We'd love to work with you. And then they have to physically go in and scroll through everything and make a note of what we've included. And so if I'm willing to do all of that for my offer, then I'm probably an amazing agent to also work with. And I will say it works. As a listing agent, if you get 7 offers on a given property and 2 of them are very similar, I will tell my clients how the agents have communicated, and I will be sure to include that because it says a lot. If we are up against deadlines, we want to make sure we can get a hold of people and that they know what they're doing. Yes, AJ.
So what do you think about, and I've had several clients do it, like they would say, hey, what do you think if we write a little letter to go along with the offer? I mean, I've never been told that you can't. I always tell them, well, if you write it, you send it over, I'll send it over with the offer. I just know we can't write it for them. But I mean, I've had pretty good luck with when clients say, hey, can we write a little letter to the seller? And I'm like, sure. And I've had pretty good luck with it. So I didn't know if that's something that is frowned upon or not.
You know, it's something that used to be incredibly common. It's something that has become more and more regulated over the past few years. It's something that really I try to discourage as much as I can just because of fair housing stuff. But if clients really want to, that's fine. I will tell them the same thing as you did of if you write it up, I will send it, but just know that you can't do anything that violates fair housing. So we need to focus on where you live now and what you've been looking for in your home search and why this property fits your needs. So we can't address the fact that you're a young married couple. We can't address the fact that like you're now expecting your first kid or that your kids already picked out their rooms. We have familial status as a protected class. So we can't include anything like that. But if you write it up that doesn't include that, I'd be more than happy to send it along. That said, occasionally you will run into situations where listing agents might say no love letters, please. But I feel like that was more common during COVID when people were ending up with like 35 offers and buyers were just desperate to have something stand out, you know, but it's actually pretty uncommon these days. But if they want to, you can. Yeah. Also make sure you are checking the agent remarks. Occasionally you will run into situations where it is listed by a given company or person, and then they have an admin assistant or a co-agent that's going to be the person that's handling the offer. So make sure you look in the agent remarks to make sure if there's any specific instructions for submitting that you know what those are. And then like we talked about all the time, save yourself time by creating templates for your offers. With templates for an offer to purchase and buyer agency, things like that, I can have an offer drafted in 15 minutes to 20 minutes, kind of make it a little game for myself, but without them, it can take quite some time. So that's pretty much it for now. I want to be cautious of y'all's time. I know we went over a lot. How in depth would you like me to be in terms of writing up a given offer? Is there anything you would like to look at? Or is there anything you'd like me to circle back to in terms of MLS? This is here for you guys. So it's whatever is of interest to you. Cream and Nisa, I know you're in the mentorship program. So I know one of the things that Jari typically does is recommend that you guys tour a sample property and write a sample offer. Have you had a chance to do that yet?
I have written the sample offer, but I haven't toured the sample property yet with Yarit's arrays.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to kind of pause on writing the offer then. I'm going to just show you real quick what I typically do in terms of workflow, but I won't necessarily go through line by line. If you want to do that, just let me know and we can set up a separate Zoom for it. But typically what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll make templates for a given year. So the forms come out in July. I'll go in and I'll make templates for both buyer agency and my offer to purchase. And so what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll fill out all of the fields that are most commonly included. So if I have an attorney that I work with regularly, this is likely going to be Sterling Law. I'm going to leave all of the dates blank because that's specific to a given client. I will also go in, as you can see, I just started these templates for the classes we had the other day, so I haven't filled them out yet, but I'm going to go through and anything that is most commonly left blank, I am adding NA in caps to all of those fields for the same reason I just said. Those little details make a big difference in how the listing agent and the sellers perceive your offer, because it shows that you didn't just rush through it, and it shows that you're not going to get that document back and fill something out without their knowledge. So I'll go through, I'll do all of that, I'll fill out everything that's common. I will then save yes. I will then go in and make a loop specific to a given property. So I'm going to take the address and add to the loop. Now, when I paste that in, it should automatically populate a number of things. One should be the MLS listing for that property, which should show the listing agent and the price. If you don't see that, then it will still have the Google Maps address for that. But I'm going to select the property and yes to import data. I'm going to click continue. I would then make sure I select new buyer template. In doing this, it will auto-populate the information that I need. Sometimes it will pull a photo for you, sometimes not. I typically will just screenshot it and upload it. I'm not going to do that for now though. But so I'll make that loop specific to the property. It's taking a second, but then I will go in and I will make a copy of these documents as a loop document to the loop that I've just created. And I'm going to make sure I select the folder that makes sense. So if I'm making the offer to purchase, I'm moving that over to the contracts document for that property. The important thing to keep in mind with all of this in terms of doc loop is every property needs to be its own loop. Otherwise, any next documents that you pull in, if you wrote an offer and you didn't get it and you keep touring, for instance, if you start to try to upload documents for a different property, it will auto revert and keep trying to use the previous one. So just make new loops for each property. I'm going to view my loop and it will auto populate certain folders for you, but then you will find that document that you copied over, and then you can go in and auto populate the information. Now, when I open this in a new loop, it will allow me to autofill. Don't worry if you close out of it, you can click autofill again and it will pop back up. But when you're in here, you can go in and add all of the property information specific to that address and then click autofill. And when you do, obviously there's more that I would fill out in there, but when you do, anything that's autofilled will come up as yellow and you can go in and continue to save everything. Now, like I said, and import everything. When I've done all of this, I will then go in and download each document individually. You can go in and download things in bulk by selecting multiple, but when you do that, it will download as one document. So just know how that appears. All right. Additionally, once you submit an offer, I highly recommend going ahead and just texting or calling that listing agent and say, hey, my offer is in your inbox. Will you just confirm receipt when you get a second? And if you're on the phone with them being like, hey, by the way, any idea how fast you think you'll be able to get a hold of the sellers? Do you think this is something we could possibly wrap up today if it's the right terms for them, and just kind of feel things out? Okay, I think I've talked enough. I know that was a nice long class. Thank you guys for hanging in there with me. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on? It can be showing related or it can be anything else.
And I have one more question, Kate.
Yeah.
Affiliated business arrangement disclosure statement, do we have to attach that to the offer letter?
Great question. No, you do have to fill it out for any client that you work with. Once they filled it out once, that's all. They don't need to fill it out again for each property, but that is for our records only. That is not something that we send to the listing agent. So the only documents that we're sending to the listing agent are going to be our offer to purchase, disclosures, addenda, and our proof of funds or pre-qual. Anything agency related, so like our working with real estate agents brochure, our exclusive buyer agency, and then also that addenda that you mentioned, or that disclosure, all of that is kept internally. So that's just for your records.
Okay. Okay. And also one more question.
Yeah.
Professional services disclosure and inspection form, do we have to fill out the vendors names? I don't know.
Great question. Yes, I would recommend that you do. That can be a long document to fill out. So I would highly recommend going in and making a template of that document. Obviously, those are a lot of vendors. So I would pull up the vendor packet that Brian sent out earlier this month or last month, and just adding vendors in there that are recommended until you have some of your own that you recommend. And then we just go through, and if the buyer wants any other vendor, we can just go in and type that up. But yes, we do want to add those vendors that people can go through and select yes or no. But when I'm going over the contract to close class on Thursday, we'll go over that document because it is a little confusing.
Okay.
Cool. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for hanging in there. I know it was a long one. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for
Thank you,
making time
kids.
this morning. Yeah. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful rest of your day.
All right, you do.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.